Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, good morning, good morning. And hopefully you can hear me all right and see me all right. Welcome to my live stream for this month, the positive and negative impacts of stress on team performance. Thank you so much for all the interest in this event as well. It's gone a bit nuts over the past few days. I've invited lots of people, but loads and loads of people have said they're attending this who are not connections with me on LinkedIn. So I'm super excited to see who's here and what's going on and hear some questions and so on and so forth. So with that in mind, I would absolutely love for you to drop in the comments where you're watching from. So let me know where you're watching from, say hello, and whether you're watching this live or on a replay as well, because of course this may be being watched on replay, because on both LinkedIn and YouTube, this will be available to watch back afterwards. This is a relatively short talk. It's only a 30-minute talk. We'll have a little bit of time for questions at the end. If you are interested in learning more about this stuff, I'm going to share with you some stuff about a masterclass I have coming up as well, if you're interested in that. And I will share with you a link and a 50% discount to that as well, if you are interested. So I'm starting to see some of the comments coming in. Brilliant. So we've got a few different places already: London, France, New York, Bristol. Brilliant stuff. Lots and lots of different places, some closer to home, some a little bit further away, which is always exciting. London, Turkey, Riga and Latvia, fantastic. Morocco, Bedfordshire, wonderful stuff. Thank you so much for getting involved. This honestly it really does mean a lot that you care about this stuff, because this is super, super important. As we know, stress does have a huge impact on all of us. It has an impact on us, our quality of life, our performance. If we're team leaders, we know it affects the people that work with us, and all the leaders I've ever met, to be honest, really do care about their people, and we don't just care about the performance, but we care about them as human beings as well. Hello to everyone. I can see some more locations coming through as well: India, Ukraine, Sweden, Detroit, Japan, Plymouth. Yes, Jack. Good to see you, Jack. That's very close to me, for any of you wondering why I'm laughing at that. Fantastic stuff. So thank you once again. Now I'm going to share with you a couple of slides as we go through this as well, because and hopefully this will work nicely. If I put this up, then perhaps you'll see. In fact, I'll do it this way. So yes, I did mention as well that we are going to mention this a couple of times. This is a very basic overview. If you're interested in the masterclass that I've put together, this is a 2-hour training on May the 3rd, so a few weeks' time. I will be sharing with you at the end a QR code for this, which you can scan and get yourself a ticket, and I will be giving you a 50% discount, which is only available for the next hour, that discount. So I'll share with you a little bit more, but if anything really rings true with you during this talk, and anything is something that you really want to learn more about so that you can implement it in your own life and also in your work, so that you can support the people around you more effectively, and the people, your direct reports, your team, so that they can not only have a better quality of life and also improve their performance as well. So this is something that I want to share with you first of all, just to kind of give you a little bit of an idea around what impacts stress might have. It may seem like a little bit of a complex diagram. I'm not going to go into too much detail on this, because it is really, really important that we spend time on this in the longer sessions so that you can understand it more. But I'm just going to give you an overview here of how different areas of stress can affect your performance and quality of life. External stresses, so things outside of you, so your workload, the relationships that you have. It could be physical stress on the body, physical demands if you're in a very, very physical job. Those are the things happening externally which put pressure and tension on ourselves. Psychological stresses are around our thoughts, our behavior, our kind of beliefs, and so on. So things which we think about or that we feel, which cause stress internally. So we've got external stresses and psychological stresses. Stresses are things which cause stress. And as you can see, there's all kinds of interactions here. They stimulate a stress response in the body. That stress response can also cause dysfunction and illness if we don't have time to recover from it. And all of these things have a direct impact and an indirect impact as well on our performance and our quality of life. Now, when it comes to positive and negative effects, a lot of the time people think that stress is a very negative thing. Okay, stress is a very negative thing. We think, I'm stressed out, I feel stressed, I'm under a lot of stress, and it's usually spoken about in the context of something not being great. You know, Does that make sense? I mean, if any of you have felt stress, please bung that in the comments as well. So like if you have felt stress, let's say in the last month, the last 4 weeks, the last month, if you have felt some kind of stress, give me a shout in the comments. Just put the word stress, or if you've already replied yes, then that's fine as well. But put the word stress in the comments if you have felt sometime in the last month that you have felt stressed, or that you could describe it in that way. Because what we've got to understand is that stress is an inevitable part of life. We've been sold this idea that a stress-free life is the goal. The goal is lying on a beach somewhere, sipping a cocktail and just stress-free, calm, beautiful. But that's just not realistic. It's not realistic at all. Stress is inevitable. The last 3 years have proven that no matter what we do in our own lives, we're still going to be at the mercy of chance and at the mercy of other people's actions, the other people's decisions as well. There's things that go on that we can't control, and that will cause pressure and tension. It will cause stress. We can't always control that. And what I want to share with you today, one of the things I want to share with you today is the understanding that, in fact, it's not just inevitable, but it's actually beneficial in some ways. Really, really important to understand that there are positives to stress as well as negatives. And we've been sold this idea. We've been sold this idea that we want no stress and that's somehow good for us. But as you can see from this graph, this is called the Yerkes-Dodson law. Nice name, that. Yerkes-Dodson. And it's also called the pressure performance curve. And if you look down at the bottom left, where it's low stress, so that bottom axis is about stress, it's about pressure, and that y-axis up the side is about performance, not just physical performance, mental performance as well. If you are under too little stress, if you're under too little pressure, you have a level of boredom. Essentially, you're bored. When the pressure starts increasing, then you start feeling like, oh, actually, do you know what? I'm starting to get a bit of interest here, starting to challenge me a bit. And at some point, you will get an optimum performance. You will get a medium level of stress, perhaps, and you will have that level of excitement, that level of motivation, that level of tension that pushes you and drives you, forces you to kind of overcome obstacles and overcome adversity. And there is nothing better in many ways than that feeling of putting yourself through a challenge of some kind and seeing yourself overcome it. Now, there is a line at which point this starts to drop off, when that stress becomes too much. And this is the point where we sometimes think that that perhaps this is where we think stress actually is. This is when we use the term stress. I'm stressed out. I'm feeling under a lot of stress. We're talking about the right-hand end of this graph, the stress zone, the fear, the panic, the choke, feeling anxious, feeling overwhelmed. But that's only one end of the curve. But that's the thing that we often find ourselves slipping into, either that kind of overstress point where we start having the negative effects. But the positive effects of stress happen in the middle, when that stress is managed effectively, when we've got enough time and space to recover, but we're also stimulated enough that we feel like we've got something to work towards. We feel like we've got purpose. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples of each of these points. So perhaps this will kind of this will explain it a little bit more clearly. I'm just going to try and read through a couple of the comments as well, just to make sure that I'm getting an indication. If anyone's got any questions as we go along, please drop them in. Okay, cool, lovely stuff. Thanks for all the interaction as well. Really appreciate that. So if you've got any questions, drop them in as we go along, and if you've got any comments, do that as well, and we'll have a little bit of time for a Q&A at the end. So let's say that top end of the zone. I was a teacher in a past life. For the past kind of 10 years, I've been working in fitness, well-being, stress management, and so on. But prior to that, I was a science teacher. Now, as a science teacher, long story short, I burned out quite catastrophically. However, when I was up in that stress zone, that top end of this curve, where I was overloaded and I was under too much pressure and I wasn't managing that pressure very well, and what happened was I was scared, I was panicking, and I couldn't deal with what was going on. I had headaches, I felt like my head was swimming, my vision was blurred, and my heart was beating super fast, was shaking, and I couldn't deal with that kind of daily getting up in the morning and having to go through the same process and feeling like I was drowning. And perhaps this is something that you've experienced as well, and perhaps this is something that you've seen occurring in your team. And what happens when people are under this or at that end of the graph for too long is they burn out, they go off work sick, they leave their jobs, they've got high absence rates. So as an individual, it's horrible and it can really affect our health. And as an organization, what we'll find is that it will really impact our productivity of our team, because they're not going to be operating because they feel like they're drowning, they're firefighting, they can't be creative, they can't innovate, they can't collaborate, they can't communicate with each other because they're so worried about how they're feeling and it's affecting everything. So the issue there is that there's too much. Now, the positive effects, to give you an example of that, I can see a couple of comments just coming in. I want to address these just as we go before I give you an example of positive stress. Someone here, so I know that there's a couple of other questions that have come in as well. So if I haven't missed any of these, don't worry, but I'm just going to draw on one. I understand the difference between eustress and distress. So this is a comment from Jenny. Just want to share with you some stuff around eustress and distress in a moment. The question is, how do we personalize our interactions with and deliverables for our teammates in order to avoid creating a stress zone environment? Jenny, it's a great question. Now, before I answer the second part, I'm just going to share around that eustress and distress. That is terminology coined by a guy called Hans Selye, who was a stress researcher in the early part of the 20th century, one of the people who really established the groundwork for our understanding of stress in a biological and psychological context. Distress is negative stress, eustress is positive stress. So this is just for anyone else watching. So distress could be up at the top end of this graph and eustress can be in the middle. Now, it's important to understand that eustress, positive stress, is quite often down to our approach, our understanding of what the stress is, our response to it, the way we frame it. So an example of that, before I answer your second question, Jenny, is that let's use physical stress as an example. Let's use a physical demand on the body. Someone might find that a physical demand on the body is distressing. Someone might find that having to run, having to lift a heavy weight, something like that is very distressing. But someone else might find it eustress, meaning positively stressful, because they see it as a challenge to overcome and they can see the personal growth that comes from it. Now, when we put our bodies under physical strain and then have enough time and space to recover afterwards, then we get fitter, we get stronger. And it's the same with mental and emotional stress. As long as the challenge is just outside our comfort zone and not so far that it will injure us, and as long as we have time and space and the resources to recover afterwards, then we will get mentally and emotionally fitter and stronger as well. So it's the same kind of idea. Now, to answer the second part of your question, Jenny, how do we personalize our interactions with and our deliverables for our teammates in order to avoid creating a stress zone environment? I'm going to share with you a few ideas around that in a few minutes' time. But of course, this is quite a short talk. And I can't go into a huge amount of detail with this. One of the things I love to do in kind of longer sessions is have a more interactive discussion, sharing ideas and coming up with practical solutions, because it does vary from team to team and it does vary from individual to individual. But what I will say, Jenny, is that in a few minutes I will share with you maybe 7 or 8 different ideas of how to do it. Now, none of the stuff that I'm going to share is groundbreaking stuff, but it's stuff that people still aren't doing in their leadership positions. They're things which we might go, well, yeah, that's obvious. Okay, great, it's obvious, but are you doing it? Because that's the key. Listening to the stuff that I'm going to share today is great, but actually acting on it, that's where the magic happens. So please, I'm going to share with you a few ideas. Please take those away and start thinking about how you can implement them. Even if it's just 1 or 2 things, you don't have to do everything at once. 1 or 2 things, how can you improve those and in your interactions with your team and go from there? So hopefully we'll come on to that. And that'll be useful for you going forward. Now, before we go into those bits, I want to address the personal element of the responsibility around stress and stress management. There are two sides to how we deal with stress in the workplace and how we make sure that that has a positive impact on our performance as an individual, on the performance of the team that we're a part of, but also on our quality of life. Because if we look back at that initial graph, I'm just going to show you this one. Performance and quality of life are the outcomes. Yeah, you can see over here on the right, performance and quality of life are in one block, because as an individual, quality of life is our well-being. It's our feeling of contentment and happiness and our ability to do the things we want to do, and our performance improves alongside our quality of life. So what benefits us as an individual and what benefits our quality of life is also going to benefit our performance, and that is going to benefit the organization, the team that we work for. So everyone should be pulling in the same direction because the benefits are across the board. It's not a zero-sum game. It's not the company wins and the individual loses, or the individual wins and the company loses. It's we either both win or we both lose. If you don't manage stress effectively, then what will happen is your quality of life will decrease, your performance will decrease, and the company will suffer as well. So whether you're an individual and you're thinking of this as an individual level, or whether you're a team leader or a business owner, everyone has skin in the game with this. Everyone stands to benefit from the same kinds of process. It's just that the processes might be different for individuals and for organizations. So if we look at here's the places that we can intervene: external stressors, so our environment, and the psychological stressors, and also how we can intervene in some of these kind of lines where we change how we process them. So for example, our psychological stresses, our thoughts, our beliefs, we can't necessarily change these overnight, but we can manage them. We can start thinking, right, are some of my beliefs, are some of my thoughts serving me here, or are they making my stress worse? And if I asked you, how could you make your life more stressful, I think that you'd be able to tell me a lot of things. I mean, in fact, I'm going to throw this out there. Drop a comment with an idea of how you could make your life more stressful, whether that's at work or somewhere else outside of work, relationships, hobbies. How could you make your life more stressful? Because if you know how you could make your life more stressful, then really you do understand this stuff already. Some people might say, oh, I'm going to leave all my work to the last minute. I'm going to ignore deadlines. I'm going to fly off the handle and get really angry anytime anyone asks me to do something. It's going to make my life more stressful. I'm going to be unkind to people. That's going to make my life more stressful. There's a lot of things that we know we could do to make life more stressful. Saying yes to everything. Great one there, Leah. Saying yes to everything is going to make your life more stressful. And so we know just by that kind of looking at this conversely, we need to have good boundaries over what we say yes to, what we don't say yes to. When can we say, actually, no, I've got enough on my plate at the moment. I can take that on, but it will have to be after I finish this project. Having those boundaries is something which people really respect. It's not some people don't respect people with poor boundaries. Procrastinate, great way of making your life more stressful. So you know these things already. Care about everything and anything. Another great example. You can only care about so many things. We've only got so much that we can care about, and we have to be picky with it. Trying to people please, another good one there, Tom. Trying to people please, being a martyr, putting everyone else first without looking after yourself. And you know that you can't please everyone. We know this stuff. Avoiding daily workouts and diets due to work. Again, we know that these things are good for us. Saying yes to everything and everyone, or keeping everything for the last. There's so many, you know this stuff already, okay? So what we can do at an individual level is look at these things that we know would make our lives more stressful and start thinking, how can we change these things to make our lives less stressful, to reduce that stress, to move ourselves from this point on the graph where we're feeling anxious and fearful because we've got too much on our plate. We've said yes to too many things. We're procrastinating. And some of these things feed back, right? Because we sometimes procrastinate because we're stressed. We avoid the work because we're stressed, and it increases the stress. So there's this kind of vicious cycle thing going on. And we need to interrupt that so that we can move from here to here. So there's individual things we can do, and you've shared some great ideas in the comments there. And obviously the stress management masterclass will go into more detail on that. What do we do from a leadership level? Well, here's some ideas. In fact, I don't know whether you're not going to be able to see the top one because of the banners and stuff. Maybe if I remove the overlay, can I remove that? There we go. So hopefully you can see that better, and I'll take myself off there. So you can see here, there's 8 ideas that you can start having to think about in the masterclass, which I'm going to share with you in a moment. We go into this in so much more detail, and how they will be drawn out in your own teams, how they will actually be implemented is going to vary from person to person, from team to team. So a few of these will cross over as well. The first one is open communication. Open communication is absolutely vital when it comes to reducing stress levels in your team. Now, you can do this whether you are a team leader or whether you're just a member of the team yourself, entry level. You can be clear and open in your communication. One of the biggest sources of stress is not knowing what the expectations are. And this ties in with the second point, setting realistic goals and expectations. When you're speaking to your team, communicate openly and clearly and set realistic goals and expectations. Understand that people need clarity. Without clarity, there is stress. There is more stress than there needs to be. Now, we're not trying to get to zero stress. In a team, in a workplace, there will be stress. There will be pressure. But why make it harder than it needs to be? Communicate openly, set realistic goals, share what the expectations are, and also share what their expectations can be from you as a leader as well. So say, look, this is what I expect from you, but this is what you can expect from me. And that level of openness and that communication really is the foundation of a team which has an appropriate level of stress and an optimal level of stress. Some of the other things here, I mean, what we're trying to do as well, I'm just going to go back a slide. What we're trying to do is get everyone to this point. Now, it's important before I go any further that we understand that this curve looks different for different people. So what would put one person here in the optimum performance is going to put another person into the stress zone. Does that make sense? For one person, what is the optimum amount of stress is going to be too much for someone else. And that will vary depending on what else is going on in people's lives. Promoting work-life balance and providing resources and support is another thing that you can do to really help support people in your organization. And when I say promoting a work-life balance, the first thing you must do is model that behavior. Have a good balance yourself. Now, work-life balance, some people like the term work-life integration, work-life harmony. There's all kinds of different words that people talk about, but essentially what it means is not allowing your work to fill all of your time when you're supposed to be with your family, or when you're supposed to be having some downtime, when you're supposed to be seeing your friends. So examples of this would be encouraging people to take their annual leave, their paid time off, and use that up. Encouraging people to go home and switch off, not have their work emails on their phone. There's all kinds of things that you can do here. Like I said, we can't go into loads of detail just from a time perspective, but have a think about how you can encourage that and how you can model it yourself. Providing resources and support. Now, these could be EAPs and other things around well-being, could be workshops, could be trainings, but this is often an organization's first port of call, and they provide these resources and support without, looking at the other things on this list as well. So resources and support are vital, but only as part of an overall bigger picture, such as fostering a positive work environment. Now, a big one here, tying in with the communication, is making sure your team feel able to question you, encourage dissent, encourage people to question your ideas, make sure that people feel safe to share their ideas and make mistakes. That's what creates psychological safety. And when we talk about a positive work environment, we're often talking about psychological safety. And what psychological safety is the ability to make a mistake and know that you're not going to get reprimanded for it. And we know as individuals that the best way to learn, the best way to get better at things is by doing and making mistakes and learning from those mistakes. If your team do not feel able to make mistakes and learn from them, they're going to make mistakes anyway, and they will hide them from you, and they will not get learned from, they will not get fixed, and your people will not have that trust with you. So foster a positive work environment where people feel safe to question, to make mistakes, to be creative, to get things wrong. Empower your team, give them big boots to fill. Have expectations that you've hired them for a reason, you've hired them for a reason. You trust their skills, so empower them to go out and make those kind of big leaps forward rather than micromanaging them. Being a role model, we've touched on. So role model by managing your own stress effectively, so they can see you doing what you say. Don't just say look after your stress, manage your stress more effectively. They need to see you doing what you say. And this is especially important for those ambitious people in your team who look to you and say, oh, I want to be like them, I want to reach that level, because they're not going to listen to what you say. They're going to see what you do and they're going to emulate it. They're going to go, oh, in order to become the manager, I need to do what they do. And if you are managing your stress terribly and you're on the cusp of burnout, they're going to end up there as well. So role model that behavior. Encourage physical activity and wellness. Of course, something already came up in the chat. So in fact, I'm just going to scroll. So I want to see who it was that said it. Pratik, avoiding daily workouts and diets due to work was one of the ideas that they said about increasing stress. We know that looking after ourselves physically decreases our overall stress levels. There is a lot of physical stress going on in our body if we don't exercise, if we're sitting for long periods of time. There's a lot of physical stress going on in our body if we're drinking a lot of alcohol or we're not eating a healthy diet, because our body is struggling. And if our body is struggling, our mind's going to struggle as well. So we need to understand that if we encourage our people to engage in more physical activity and look after their health, then they're going to thrive. They're going to do much better at work and they're going to have a better quality of life. Now, none of this stuff is strict. And when I say encourage physical activity and wellness, I'm not talking about everyone being a health nut. I'm talking about just enough that it improves the quality of life. Now, we're at 3 minutes before I want to close this off. And so I'm going to kind of briefly recap some of the points, and then I'm going to share with you the QR code for the masterclass. I really hope that you have taken some value from this. I know it's a really short talk. I know we haven't been able to get into much depth, but I wanted to just get you thinking differently about stress and understanding that actually there are positives to the right amount of stress. And if we go back and we have a look at this curve, we want to make sure we're at that point. What I'd like you to have a little think about right now is, where are you right now on that graph? Where are you right now on that graph? You don't need to answer this in the comments, but just have a think. Are you bored? Are you understimulated? Are you underloaded? Are you at your optimal? Are you excited about the amount of pressure you're under? Do you feel like you're able to prove yourself? Or are you starting to get anxious? Are you slipping into that stress zone? Now, here's the same question for you again if you're a leader. Do you know right now where everyone in your team is on that curve? And if you don't, perhaps it's time that you ask them. Perhaps it's time that you ask them, because you may think that some people are up here when they're actually here. You might think that some people are here when they're actually here. Here, you need to give them more work. It's not just about reducing workload. Sometimes people might need more work in order to thrive. Other people might be up here and you can take some stuff off their plate and give it to the people who are down here. You can manage this stuff so effectively at a systemic level if you understand where people are on this graph. Where am I pointing? Over here. If you understand where you are and where other people are. Sandra, could we have a replay of this? You absolutely can. This replay is actually going to be available both on my LinkedIn, on the event page. It will be there to watch back. It will also be on my YouTube channel as well. So this will be available to watch back, and you can share it with whoever you want as well. Now, before we kind of close off, this is the masterclass that I was telling you about. It's on May the 3rd, 12 till 2 p.m. UK time. This is a QR code. I'm going to leave this up on the screen right now. For the next 31 minutes, that 50% discount code is live. So you can scan that QR code. And if this is something that you think is really vital for you to learn as a leader, this masterclass is particularly for people leaders, stress management masterclass for people leaders, whether you have a team of 3 or 30 or 300 or 3,000. It's for people who want to manage stress more effectively for themselves as a leader, but also look after their people more effectively. So scan this QR code. There's three different ticket options there, but you can get 50% off on all of those. Live stream 1204 is the discount code, which will be live for another 30 minutes, and you can get yourself booked in for that. And on May the 3rd, we'll spend 2 hours getting into the nuts and bolts of this in a lot more detail. What I will say at this point as well is that a big part of what I do is going in and delivering training for managers and teams. If that's something that you'd be interested in, please do drop me a message, drop me a DM, and I would be happy to speak to you about coming into your organization, either virtually or in person, and delivering a 1 hour talk or a 2 hour workshop and give you some real meaty stuff that you can actually action and will change the trajectory of your team, improve quality of life, and improve performance as a result. Thank you so much for watching this. I am absolutely honored that you spent the last half hour with me. If you ever want to chat about this stuff, my DMs are open. If you're not already connected with me, please follow me or connect with me on LinkedIn and let's have a chat about this stuff. And I'm putting out plenty of content to help you. Big love to all of you. Have an amazing rest of your day, and I look forward to speaking to you again very soon.